What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with What If Deku story. What if Deku disappeared for 5 years and returned as the coldest hero king? If you enjoyed then please like, share and do comments. A hand slammed on his desk and Izuku awoke from his dazed state. He had been daydreaming again. Kacchan was there, standing over his desk with an annoyed expression on his face. He spoke. Izuku heard nothing. Kacchan made that angry face he always put on when someone was ignoring him. Izuku blinked and rubbed his eyes. Like hell, that means you can do shit, damn nerd. And all over again, Izuku wished his hearing hadn't come back. What, did you fall asleep and start dreaming about heroes, again? Keep that up and your grades are gonna tank, Deku. He was dreaming, wasn't he? It was bizarre. He couldn't even remember falling asleep. 1 second he had been listening to his homeroom teacher talk about the hero track. Then nothing. The dream, he couldn't remember it anymore. But he felt like it was something important. Something that he needed to remember. But he didn't know why. Weird. What's this? Kacchan asked. Before Izuku could protest, Kacchan swept up the hero journal Izuku had been working on. What are you? Taking notes on how to be a hero, huh? Izuku made an attempt for the notebook. Kacchan lifted it out of his reach. You really think you can be a hero, Deku? With that non-existent quirk of yours? Huh? Your quirk should be being quirkless. You think you can get into UA? You think you can be better than me with your worthless quirk? And no, Kacchan, I never. Watch this nerd. Kacchan ignited a small explosion in the palm of his hand, igniting the notebook and causing Izuku to yelp. This, Kacchan said, letting loose a rapid succession of explosions in similar size to the first. Each volley of combustion slowly blowing the notebook apart, pages burning away. This is real power. Kacchan. Deku cried. Tears were streaming down his face already. He couldn't help it. It hurt to see his friend destroy all the time and effort Izuku had put into that journal. It was his key to getting into UA High School. Kacchan began walking towards the open window, sneering over his shoulder at Izuku. Take a page out of this journal of yours, and just buzz off. Izuku jumped from his seat. He couldn't reach Kacchan in time, but maybe if he was fast enough he could. The notebook was flung out the window. Izuku hit the opening and cried out in frustration as he watched the notebook land into the little koi pond out front. He heard snickering from behind him as Kacchan made to leave with his 2 other friends. The one with the wings and the one with the finger quirk. Here's some more advice, you damn nerd. Izuku was only barely paying attention to his friend anymore. Pray that you will be born with a better quirk in the next life. And take a swan dive off of the roof. There was a chorus of laughter as the trio left the classroom. Izuku didn't hear the door shutting behind them as they left. All he could hear was his notebook hitting the water with a splash. The halls had been empty. All the students had gone ahead and went home for the day. All except for Izuku Midoriya, as he begrudgingly walked with his head hung low out the front entrance and towards the koi pond. Stop it, damn it, he cursed under his breath at the fish that were enjoying their little fried notebook gourmet. He stood there for a while in the water, ignoring the fish swimming around him, occasionally giving his black uniform pants a nibble. They could nibble away all they wanted at Aldera Junior High. Idiot, Izuku muttered under his breath on the wall home. What if I had actually done it? Then what would you do, Kacchan? Kacchan had been Izuku's first friend. Their mothers were friends. Izuku had known Kacchan since his earliest memories. They had always talked and played together under the subject of heroism. This was a world straight out of a comic book. People had superhuman abilities under a general consensus called quirks. Around 8% of the world's total population had a quirk. The rest were quirkless. The difference could be spotted at a young age with a small useless joint in the toe. Kacchan had gained his quirk earlier than most. It was amazing. Explosion. Kacchan secreted nitroglycerin-like sweat from his palms and could ignite it, resulting in explosions. Everyone had blessed him and praised him, telling him that one day, he would make an amazing hero. Izuku's quirk never came. His mother had even taken him to a doctor for testing. Turns out, Izuku has a quirk. It just is nothing. Because of this, all of his life, he had asked everyone if he could become a hero. And everyone refused to answer. Everyone except for Kacchan. Slowly but surely over time it felt like a distance was growing between the 2 friends. Like Izuku was at a standstill while he was watching his friend racing away towards some great destiny. With his new power, came a new overblown ego. Kacchan became arrogant, a bully. The other kids looked up to him. They looked at him like he was already a star shining bright in the night sky, while Izuku was nothing more than a passing rock in an endless void. He would show them. He would prove them all wrong. With the destroyed notebook in his hands, he was going to become a hero. No matter what happened, he might not be as big and strong as All Might, but Izuku would undoubtedly become a hero one day. And it all would start at UA, a private high school dedicated to training up and coming heroes along with the basic educational courses. Something was rattling. Something loud and metallic. There were sirens in the distance. Probably a villain attack somewhere. Maybe if he was fast enough, he could catch the tail end of the fight. Something massive and green swarmed around him. Izuku panicked, dropping his notebook. He couldn't think, there was no time. He was being drowned in a horrid-smelling slime monster. "Come on kid," a disjointed voice spoke in his ears. "Just let me take your body." Izuku clawed uselessly at green sludge. The strange liquid was now pouring into his throat. He couldn't breathe. Everything hurts. It was tight. His throat. His chest. His nose was flaring. Everything was going dark. Was this how he died? Izuku opened his eyes to a giant of a man lightly slapping his face. His vision began to focus more into the man's blonde hair and deep eyes. All Might. All Might. Japan's strongest hero. The #1 hero, who saves everyone with a smile on his face. Making sure that everyone feels safe telling them that, "I am here." All Might. Izuku freaked. He was mumbling. He was fumbling over his words. There were so many questions he had. What did he ask? What did he do? Wait, he could sign his notebook. Izuku shrieked like a fangirl at a pop concert when he noticed All Might's signature on his burnt notebook. All Might was leaving. No, he couldn't leave. There was so much he had to ask. So much he needed to know more than anything. Before he could think, Izuku grabbed onto All Might's pant leg as he jumped into the sky. All Might landed on a nearby building and gave Izuku a light scolding for his foolish actions. Izuku nodded along, but he needed to ask. He needed to know. All Might, he called. "I was born with a worthless quirk. It does nothing. I might as well be quirkless. And I wanted to know if it was possible. Could I ever become a hero like you? A hero that smiles while saving everyone." All Might was coughing. There was smoke. All Might had transformed into a smaller, weak man. He told Izuku the truth. "No, without power you could never become a hero." Izuku's world shattered. All Might went on to talk about his weakness. An injury to his stomach from his villain a couple years back. The reason why he couldn't work as often as he used to. And now, he was at his day's limit. All Might left Izuku heading down the stairwell. Izuku hadn't moved from his spot. Frozen in place. Eyes locked onto the railing in front of him. How high up was he? Maybe 7 stories. Would that be high enough? To take a swan dive. To be born with a better quirk in the next life. Police sirens and a large explosion could be heard in the distance. Had the fight from earlier still been going on? He didn't know why, or how, but Izuku found himself walking in that direction. There he was standing in the crowd. It's all he ever did. It's what he was meant to do. Become just another face in the crowd. He was never meant to be the one fighting the villains. Kacchan was right. He was nothing more than a useless, worthless, Deku. There was a space in the crowd. And Izuku watched in horror as the sludge villain from earlier had a kid stuck in a hole the same way Izuku had been earlier. How was the kid still alive? He had only been held for a minute and he felt like he was dying. If it wasn't for All Might saving him. Because of him, All Might was out of power for the day. Because of him, this kid would die. Then Izuku's eyes met with a striking familiar red across the distance. Kacchan. Izuku moved. He was running towards Kacchan. People were screaming. Heroes were yelling. But nobody moved for the useless kid running to save his friend. Izuku blinded the villain with his backpack. Pencils and other objects lodged inside a loose floating eyeball. Izuku was clawing at green slime once again. He wouldn't let Kacchan die. The slime wrapped around Izuku and he was in the air. His back hurt. His head hurt. Everything hurts. It was hard keeping his eyes open. Was he bleeding? All Might was standing over him. Kacchan behind him with a numb expression. Red eyes glazed as he stared at Izuku. "Don't cry, Kacchan. All Might is here, we are saved." He felt cold. He could only see darkness. And he only heard voices. They belonged to All Might, Kacchan, heroes, and paramedics. Then there was nothing. A hand slammed on his desk and Izuku awoke from his dazed state. He had been daydreaming again. Kacchan was there, standing over his desk with an annoyed expression on his face. He spoke. Kacchan looked down at Izuku with a snarl and asked, "What the hell is your problem?" "Kacchan," Izuku yelled, leaping up to embrace Kacchan in a tight hug. "You are okay." Everything in the classroom went silent. Wait a moment. Classroom. Izuku looked around, stunned. Where was All Might? What happened to the villain? Was it all just a dream? Kacchan's body tensed under Izuku's grip. His eyes wide. Then the explosion happened. Izuku cried out in pain as his friend blasted him away with his quirk. Izuku looked up at Kacchan with teary eyes. "What the fuck?" Kacchan asked out loud, absolute rage seeping through his lips. His eyes were narrowed like dagger points. "Get your brain checked, damn stupid nerd." Izuku lay on the classroom floor. Kacchan walked over to his friends who were standing by the door. "Come on, let's beat it." Izuku was crying. It had just been a terrible, terrible dream. A nightmare. As if All Might had a weakness or Kacchan could be stopped by a sludge villain. Maybe Izuku did need to get his brain checked. Or maybe, just maybe it wasn't a dream after all. When Izuku was 5, the doctor had told Izuku that he did in fact possess a quirk. An invisible quirk. Not a power that could turn Izuku invisible, but a power that showed no noticeable change. Could Izuku have some form of foresight? Like Sir Night Eye? No. Night Eye's quirk showed the future. Izuku's quirk showed Kacchan ruining his notebook. That hadn't happened because of Izuku's outburst. So what was his quirk? A variant of foresight? No. It was more than foresight. Izuku could remember the feeling of being choked, of being slammed against a wall, and the utter devastation caused by All Might's words. All Might. If what Izuku saw had actually happened, then that would mean, no, without power you could never become a hero. Izuku deflated. His hopes had risen at the thought of his quirk finally emerging, only to be dashed by those damning words. Izuku walked home feeling the weight of despair hang over his shoulders. The number 1 hero had told him his dreams of becoming a hero were an impossibility. The number 1 hero was a fake. A golden symbol for all to admire and envy. Just a mask hiding the frail and dying man beneath. Izuku rubbed his eyes. Despite the hero's harsh words, Izuku was sad for him. Izuku passed over the sewer opening where the slime villain had attacked him in the vision. Nothing happened. He wondered if his quirk showed him alternate realities. Possibilities thrown into the wind by a series of butterflies. A quirk that allowed him to live brief possible outcomes that were parallel to his world. When he realized that this could be yet another alternate reality, it was a strange thought that would lead him down a rabbit hole if he continued down that path. Izuku pushed open the door and heard the noise. It was so distinct and it pulled at his heart. His emerald eyes widened and he dashed forwards. Izuku was met with his crying mother at the kitchen table. Her phone was lying beside her. Mom, what's wrong?" he asked her. Inko Midoriya looked up at her son with all the strength she lacked and said, "Mitsuki called." Was this about Kacchan? Just what trouble was he causing for their parents now? "Izuku," her voice was soft and fragile. "There was a villain attack earlier today. The villain took someone hostage. All Might stopped him before anyone else could be hurt." A villain attack. The sludge villain that had attacked Izuku and Kacchan in the alternate reality. So All Might had saved the day again. "That's great," Izuku said with a smile. "Then what's wrong?" Inko visibly steeled herself. The hostage suffocated before All Might arrived on the scene. Izuku deflated. "Oh, well, I guess you can't save everyone. Even if you are All Might." Inko choked on a sob. Wait, why did Kacchan's mom call about the villain attack? Why was his mother so upset? Izuku remembered his dream from earlier and dreaded his mother's next words. Katsuki was the hostage. Izuku felt his blood run cold. Katsuki was pronounced dead upon arrival at the hospital. "Oh wow, that's amazing, Kacchan," Izuku exclaimed. Kacchan was sitting within the Midoriya family's living room. Tiny red-hot explosions were leaping from the young boy's open palms. "Yeah," Kacchan said. "It is amazing. I'm amazing." Izuku nodded his head in eager agreement. Kacchan was cool. He fought off the bigger kids and smiled. He was so much like All Might. Now he had a pretty flashy quirk. Kacchan would make a great hero one day. Kacchan paused with his demonstration and looked thoughtful at Izuku. Well, what's your quirk, Deku? Izuku's smile faltered for only a second. My quirk hasn't come in yet. But I'll bet it'll be here any day now that you have yours, Kacchan. Kacchan kept staring at Izuku, thinking about something only the boy with the explosion quirk could know before nodding. Yeah, and then you can be my sidekick, Deku. Come on mom, come on. Izuku shouted up at his mom, pulling her further into the hospital. This was the day. He'd finally learn what amazing quirk he'd been so blessed to have. Maybe he'd have super telekinetic powers like his mother. Or maybe he'd inherited some fire-based quirk from his father. Then Kacchan would really accept him as a sidekick. Maybe even as an equal. Come on mom, hurry. Inko Midoriya was being dragged like a sled behind 8 reindeer. Slow down, Izuku. You might hurt yourself. Maybe his quirk would be something altogether new. Quirks worked in weird ways, or so Izuku had read. It was common to receive a quirk related to your parents' quirks. But there were some cases where a man with an enhanced vision quirk and a woman with an arm braiding quirk had a child that could fly. Something new and completely unrelated to either of his parents' quirks. Izuku shook his head energetically. There's no time mom. I need to know now. Izuku, honey. We have an appointment set up. The doctor's not just going to run off on us, Inko said. But I need to know, mom. Kacchan already got his quirk. I need to know now so I can be ready to be the best hero second only to All Might and Kacchan. All Might. It all started with All Might. One of Izuku's 2 favorite heroes in the entire world. Before Izuku had seen that video of All Might saving all of those people, smiling. Izuku hadn't been too interested in quirks. Sure, they were cool, but what could you really do with them? All Might showed Izuku how to save people. All Might showed Kacchan how to beat up villains. It was 2 basic principles of being a hero. It was a sign. They were meant to become heroes together. Izuku and Kacchan. So Izuku had to know just how well his quirk would complement Kacchan's own. Well, it does appear that your son has a quirk factor. The doctor stared at his results from testing Izuku. Izuku began to shout up and down in amazement. This was awesome. Inko bit her lip and looked down at Izuku wearily. So then, about my boy, what kind of a quirk does he have? Is it suitable for hero work? Is it dangerous? Will Izuku be okay? The doctor regarded the excited young boy before looking Inko in Inko's eyes. The glare from the ceiling lights shifted away and Inko could see confusion. Well, you see, Miss Midoriya, little Izuku here has a rather unique quirk. I do. Izuku was beaming up at the 2 adults. Yes, that's correct young man. The doctor nodded. You have a rare variant in the world of quirks. You have what we call an invisible quirk. Wow. Yes. Wow indeed. Or at least, I'm mostly positive it's an invisible quirk rather than a dormant quirk. The doctor frowned. Izuku faltered, only a bit at the doctor's tone. But I have a quirk, right? I can turn invisible. Inko looked at the doctor a little lost. The doctor shook his head. No, young man. An invisible quirk is similar to a dormant quirk. Only, it's always active. You just can't tell what the effects are. It's like you don't even have a quirk at all. Izuku hit the floor with his butt. His mother rushed over and wrapped her arms around Izuku. The doctor was turning away, lost in thought. However, even I should. The master would have. This technology we've been working on, it should have identified just what his quirk was. I'm sorry, Izuku, Inko whispered into her son's ear. Let's go home now, okay? I'll bake you a treat. Everything will be alright. Izuku didn't respond visibly. His dreams of becoming a hero had been dashed. His aspirations to becoming Kacchan's sidekick, his equal, dead in the water. The doctor's words were ringing on the door of doom. It's like you don't even have a quirk at all. He couldn't imagine it. Izuku should have. He should have known. Izuku let his mother guide him out of the office. Inko tried to say something to the doctor, but he was too lost in a rambling. But perhaps maybe. The doctor stared at the results and rushed over to the fridge. I know I have plenty of agents. If I could rerun this sample, isolate the quirk factor, then maybe. But it was too late. He needed another sample. Hey, you wouldn't mind doing this old man a kindness, would you? The doctor turned to the Midoriya family. There's this good friend of mine who has the ability to identify just what exactly a quirk does. If it wouldn't be any trouble, could you The doctor stared wide-eyed at the empty room. No. The doctor rushed out and yelled if anyone had seen the Midoriya family. But it was too late. Inko was already on her way home with her baby boy, thinking on how she could make this all better. The doctor nearly pulled his hair out. Invisible quirk. It was a long time ago. The winter season had struck Japan and most people with common sense stayed indoors where it was warm. Others braved the streets in heavy wear to transit to their choice of workplace. A blonde teenager ran through the snow along the streets. He ran through the downtown and he ran through the suburbs. People watched as he'd run to the frozen beaches and back to the train stations. He ran past a group of children dancing on a still pond and he dashed across the cold black top. He ran until he was hard of breathing and his legs burned like never before. He wanted to puke so bad but he clenched his stomach and held it down. Just a bit further. The 14-year-old ran and ran until he was falling and falling. Someone caught the boy before he could hit the ground. Warm gloves held his sides and strong arms lifted him upright and held him firm so he wouldn't fall over. The teenager felt dizzy, his eyes were all over the place, focusing in and out of view. Whoa, there. That was quite the workout, young man. A voice. But you should be more careful. It was a woman's voice. Soft and gentle but still carrying a bit of a scolding air to her words. Long dark hair tied back into a ponytail. And a smile so wide and bright it warmed Toshinori's cold skin. Toshinori dropped down into the sewers. The first thing to hit him was the foul stench, the second was the impact from landing. It wasn't the first time Toshinori had resorted to using the sewers for transit. It was something he had become accustomed to ever since his time limit became an issue. No one could know his secret. No one could know his burdens. He had to carry the world on his shoulders. Because, who else would do it? Toshinori ran through the sewers. He felt out of breath and his lungs were already burning. His eyes were stinging but he had to keep going. Why? Because, I am here. Toshinori almost snorted. Once he found the trail of sewage, Toshinori slipped once. Then again when he found an opened manhole above him. Put on that smile, Toshinori, he spoke to himself. Without a second thought he leapt upwards as high as he could. In the air he called upon that power burning dimly from within and transformed into a hero. All Might landed outside the sewers and didn't hesitate when he saw the young schoolboy in the villain's hold. All Might smashed the sludge villain into pieces with one Texas smash. The boy was falling. Gravity was bound to give the boy at least one minor injury. All Might was faster and caught the boy rather gently despite his oversized form. He laid the boy down and noticed some items spilled from his backpack. Now what kind of hero would just leave this here for the kid to pick up? The kid had just been attacked for goodness sake. While picking up the boy's items with super speed he caught sight of a hero notebook. Notes on how to be a hero. All Might made sure to sign one of the pages for the little fanboy. It was the least he could do when he owed the boy so much. It was All Might's fault the boy was even caught up in all of this, if only he had been faster, if only he wasn't so. All Might began scooping up the unconscious villain into the only container he had available and suitable for capture. A soda bottle. He was kind of surprised the large villain could fit into the little bottle. Quirks were a really incredible thing. On the offhand All Might wondered just how much good one could accomplish with a quirk like this one. What a waste of a quirk. All Might turned to leave. He had to leave. He was running out of time. But, the boy still hadn't woken up yet. All Might kneeled over the green-haired boy and did the only sensible thing he could think of. He slapped the kid. Not hard mind you, just a storm of silly light little slaps. Enough to cause a very minor discomfort. He was aware with his insane power that a normal slap from him could shatter buildings. After a moment the boy began to wake. And All Might felt uneasy around the kid. Most kids when meeting with All Might were excited, falling over half dead and giving All Might the scare of his life thinking he'd just killed someone. But no, not this kid. The green-haired boy looked up at All Might with something akin to anger. Maybe the kid had an overabundance of pride. Most youngins who aspired to be heroes were a little too arrogant in their abilities. It was something he had known growing up quirkless. All Might, the boy began. I have a question for you. The voice was bland and almost monotone in quality. All Might wanted to cringe away. But he owed it to the kid to not appear uncomfortable. But he still had to leave. His time was running out. He could feel one for all fading already. I'm sorry, but I've got to go. You know the drill. The number one hero is always on the move. Ever vigilant. All Might leapt up into the sky, but not before the kid grabbed onto his legs. He actually tried shoving the kid off of his legs until he realized that the kid would die from the fall. All Might was powerful, and when he leapt from the ground he was like an airplane taking off. Right now the two were soaring well over the highest buildings around. Damn it. All Might felt the blood well up from his injury. It hurt. It hurt way too much. He'd pushed his body and quirk too far. He was going to transform. He couldn't, but with the kid so close. He couldn't. The two landed on a rooftop. All Might told the kid that he needed to get the villain to the police station. But the boy was adamant. All Might waved to the boy but stopped when he heard the boy's next words. I know your secret, All Might. All Might froze. But the kid couldn't know about his secret. Was he bluffing or, I'm afraid you must be confused. I know about your injury, the boy went on. How you took a fatal injury during a big battle. I know you only have a little time every day to do hero work. All Might's mind was racing. Who was this kid? How did he know? Did he have connections with All for One? One of his other enemies? Just who was this young man? And what did he want with this blackmail? Money, status, power. I want something from you. All Might coughed up blood and his form gave out. A blast of smoke expelled from his skin as he shrank into his sickly form. Toshinori wiped at his bloody lips and gave the kid a look. If you think that you can, I want you to answer a question. A question? What kind of question? If the boy already knew about his secret, what else did he know about? And what didn't he know about that he wanted to know? How did he know? Listen kid, Toshinori sighed. I don't know what kind of trouble you've gotten yourself into. Who told the kid? But, Toshinori went on. Perhaps you should keep quiet about this secret. Was it an ally or an enemy? The boy looked up at Toshinori and his eyes were blazing. The boy was angry. Has Toshinori done something wrong to him? Or did the boy just have something against heroes? But then why did he have a notebook on how to be a hero? Was it him? Was it All for One? No, I killed him. I killed him. But, Toshinori was about to call somebody. Maybe Nedzu to dig up everything he could find on this kid. Do you actually believe that you're a hero? Toshinori blinked. The boy stared up at him from across the rooftop. And the words hit Toshinori. And it hurts. Because they were the same words, Toshinori questioned himself some nights. All thoughts of All for One fled when he noticed that the boy was hurting too. That same look that Toshinori held. Contempt, stressed, and overwhelmed. How could some kid understand Toshinori's feelings of worthlessness? But he did. And Toshinori saw that. Kid. The boy watched Toshinori, waiting. Toshinori breathed. When I was your age, there was no symbol of peace. Fear ran more rampant. Few people were happy. We all looked to those who could smile. Toshinori remembered his master. He could almost smile. I wanted to become that person for everyone to see. For everyone to feel safe knowing that if the strongest, most active hero can still smile after everything, then everything must be fine. The kid started at Toshinori and spoke his mind. But everything isn't fine. He pointed to the blood on Toshinori's sleeves. You're hurt. And you hide your hurt behind a smile. You pretend to smile, that isn't the same as smiling. Toshinori nodded at the boy's words. Who could ever believe in a fake smile like that? I can't believe I fell for it like everyone else. Nothing is fine. You can't be a hero for more than an hour a day. You can't keep everyone safe. People still die. Toshinori wanted to correct the boy and say, less than an hour actually. But he knew it wouldn't be appreciated. He sighed and looked longingly at the sky. You're right, kid. People still die. People die every day. And there's little I can do about it. Toshinori couldn't see it. But the boy's expression slackened at the truthfulness of Toshinori's words. I can't be everywhere at all times. I can't be there to save the day. And I can't be there to say, I am here. But that's what a symbol is for. People look at me and think believe that they are safe. And that's all that matters. But that's wrong. What about the people who you can't save? It's not fair to them. Kid, Toshinori looked away from the bright blue sky. The world is never fair. If it was, he didn't need to explain it to the kid. He understood it just as much as Toshinori. And Toshinori realized just why the kid was so angry with him. It was because All Might hadn't been there at one point to save the boy or someone the boy knew. He hadn't been there. And that hurt too. It hurt so much he wanted to break down and cry at the sight of the kid before him. He couldn't he? The boy knew so much already, what was a couple tears? But no, even now, Toshinori would stand tall, even if a little slouched. Nobody could hold up a supermodel form forever after all. The kid was still watching Toshinori. Finally he nodded. But he had one last thing to ask. How do you keep doing what you do? How can you keep saving people? Knowing that you can't save everyone. That somewhere out there, is a person like me out there. Because I'd be damned. Toshinori threw on his cape and rushed out into the city. He had to do something. He helped evacuate as many civilians as he could. When he felt and heard the explosion. Just stay out of the way, please, Toshinori. He felt so useless, powerless. But he had to keep going. His master believed in him. And these people. Toshinori glanced away from the child in his arms and towards the collapsed building where those people had been. He had to keep moving. He had to. When he evacuated all of the survivors, Toshinori leapt into battle. The cry of surprise from his master and the curse from Gran Torino was enough to know that he'd get the scolding of a lifetime from both of them when this was all over. Nana Shimura said something to Gran Torino and he was off. And tackling Toshinori out of the area. No, he struggled. He had to get loose. He had to fight. He had to help her. Gran Torino had to help her. They had to save her. And when Nana Shimura looked back at them, she didn't weep. She didn't look angry. She just smiled. Toshinori tried to struggle against his homeroom teacher. He shouted towards his master. And realized it was the last time Toshinori would see his master. That smile. It would haunt him till he avenged her. Toshinori felt old. Because if I stop, then who's going to pick up where I left off? I have to keep doing all I can until I can't anymore. That's what it means to be the symbol of peace. Even when people fall through the cracks, I have to keep moving. I may not be able to save everyone, but if I can at least save one more person before I'm done, then it'll be worth it. And with a heavy heart Toshinori left the boy on the rooftop. It wasn't what the kid had wanted to hear. But Toshinori couldn't tell him what he wanted to hear. The boy's faith in him was shaken. It was best to reaffirm that faith with some truth. Even if it hurts. Toshinori had forgotten all about the sludge villain until later that evening. So caught up in his own emotional turmoil, but by then it was too late. Izuku's eyes hadn't left his shoes after All Might's last words. He felt the tears pricking the corners of his eyes and he blinked. That wasn't at all what he had wanted All Might to tell him. But it was the truth. Izuku wanted to chase after the hero and tell him all of his problems. But his quirk wouldn't let him. And Izuku hated it. Izuku Midoriya had thought he had understood hate. He had grown up his whole life without knowing his own quirk. He hated the way people looked down on him. But he never held it against them. It wouldn't be right to. But his quirk, he hated it. And Izuku held it against his quirk. This was pointless. Izuku was crying now. A waste of time. Izuku crept towards the rooftop's edge. Why couldn't he have told me something encouraging? Something to help me. Something to. He was so useless. All Might was so useless. Kacchan was so useless. Everyone was so useless. Izuku couldn't die, at least not permanently, but it didn't make him strong. All Might was a titan, but he still couldn't save Kacchan. And Kacchan was amazing but not amazing enough to save himself. They were only human. Each and every one of them. That was what people forgot with the coming of quirks. People stopped seeing each other as people. People began judging others by their quirks, holding them up to high expectations. And it was expectations that had broken All Might. Izuku saw that. And expectations were breaking Kacchan. Izuku was so angry with himself. He was the only one who could save either of them. No one else had his quirk. It was Izuku's responsibility. But why try? Why try when he was just going to fail? It was as All Might had said. He might not be able to save everyone. But even if he could save just one person, it would be worth it. So why not give up on Kacchan? Why not just let him die? Because Izuku couldn't. It wasn't in his character to let anyone die. Izuku chose not to jump off the rooftop. The day was still young. He could still save Kacchan. Izuku found the alley where he had first died. The one where Kacchan had been attacked by the sludge villain. Where all of the heroes had been. But oddly enough no one was here. The only thing Izuku found was a soda bottle filled with green slime. And 2 eyeballs. Izuku dropped the bottle. Almost let it hit the ground before catching it. This couldn't be. But it was. The sludge villain glared up at Izuku from within the bottle. And Izuku glared down at the villain. This was the thing that had been killing him and Kacchan. This tiny little. Izuku was angry. He almost considered taking the villain home and boiling it on the stove. But, as angry as he was, that wouldn't be heroic. He would take the villain to the police station and be done with this nightmare. But he was trapped in a bottle. How did it escape? How did it get to Kacchan? What the fuck is this? Izuku heard the familiar voice and stood still. Kacchan. Walking through the shadows of the alley, approaching Izuku was Kacchan and his 2 friends. His friends looked nervous while Kacchan looked really pissed. Kacchan. Damned nerd. What are you doing? Are you stalking me now? What? Izuku was indignant. No, I was just. An explosion rocked Izuku and he stumbled. The bottle slipped from his hands and dropped towards the ground. Izuku fell on his rear and stared in horror as the pressure from the landing caused the bottle's lid to pop off. And what was that earlier today at the school? Huh, think you're tough shit. Fucking Deku. I don't know what got into you, but you gotta. Kacchan stopped his ranting when something green slipped from the bottle. And the thing grew and grew. Izuku was the first to move. He threw a fist as the sludge villain and watched in dread as his fist sank into its slimy body. The sludge villain glanced at Izuku. You idiot. But I don't need you. Not when I have the perfect skin suit right in front of me. The sludge villain turned towards Kacchan and Kacchan snarled. Skin suit. What the hell are you? You fucking freak. Kacchan's 2 friends went running. Izuku wasn't sure, but it was almost as if Kacchan was hesitating. But that couldn't be it. Kacchan sent a right hook forwards and set off a huge explosion from his palm. The explosion did manage to blow some of the sludge villain apart, but it also sent Izuku flying into a window. Izuku cried out as his hand was stuck with a shard of glass. Kacchan wavered at Izuku's cry and muttered something when the sludge villain acted on Kacchan's hesitation. Izuku screamed internally as Kacchan got himself captured. You damned idiot. I had this under control. This was the one. I could have saved everyone. He was sealed away. This is all your fault. You idiot. Izuku gripped the sharp broken piece of glass in his hand. The sludge villain had wrapped itself around Kacchan. Heroes were arriving as a reaction to Kacchan's explosions. Several fires had started and Izuku grimaced. It's not my fault. Not this time. I could have saved everyone. Turned this guy into the police. It's not my fault. It's Kacchan's. Izuku heard the cries and shouts of heroes, yelling at him to get out of there. Izuku ignored them and jabbed the piece of glass into his neck. Kacchan ceased his explosions for a second to stare at Izuku. Even the sludge villain looked surprised. One of the heroes was charging in now, catching Izuku as he fell. The blood. There was so much. It hurt. Izuku coughed up blood and glared at Kacchan. This is your fault. Izuku Midoriya died. Izuku could remember choking on his own blood. The coppery taste, it felt horrible. But during that entire time he was dying, not once did he look away from Kacchan. It's all his fault. Izuku rubbed at his teary eyes and saw Kacchan standing over his desk. Smirking. Izuku's blood was up in his cheeks. His head felt hot and his fists were tightly clenched with his fingernails digging into his palms. It's all your fault, Kacchan. Had Izuku growled. It didn't matter. Izuku was getting up from his desk. His muscles were tense, wound and ready for action. He couldn't hear anything except for his own beating heart and his own thoughts loud in his ears like a war drum. Kacchan, if you were my friend you wouldn't act like this. If you were my friend you wouldn't cause me harm. If you were really my friend, Kacchan, then why do you hate me? Kacchan's 2 friends were standing over by the classroom doorway watching wearily. Izuku was not acting like his usual timid self. In fact, he was acting kind of confrontational. But that couldn't be, this was useless Deku. Deku, Kacchan's words boomed in Izuku's head. That must be what you call someone who can't achieve or do anything. Quirkless, worthless, Deku. Hey, Kacchan barked at Izuku. What do you think you're doing, Deku? Think you're tough without a quirk? Kacchan. Izuku mumbled. Huh, what's that? You say something, shitty nerd. Izuku looked up and emerald colors bore into crimson. You're a terrible friend. Kacchan looked suddenly taken aback. Whatever he had been expecting. It hadn't been those words. And Izuku. Izuku finally let that anger boil over and decked Kacchan in the face. Izuku wasn't strong by any means. He was scrawny and weak, but his punch had managed to knock Kachan's head back for a second. And then Kachan was shoving Izuku back hard. Kachan cracked his neck and glared at Izuku. You really think you can take me on? Worthless Deku. You really think you're better?